Hello, my name is Haley, and today we are going to be talking about the This Woven Kingdom series by Tahereh Mafi. The series currently includes 3 books: This Woven Kingdom, These Infinite Threads, and All This Twisted Glory. However, these are not the only books in the series, and it will be continuing. Basically, it's a book about our main character, Alize, who is a long-lost Jinn queen, and she has to find her people and rise to power, all while dealing with the ever so complicated thing that is love. The first book has a 3.95 stars on Storygraph. It took me 6 days to read and I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. The second book has a 4.01 rating on Storygraph. It took me 12 days to read and I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. And the last one has a 3.97 rating on Storygraph. It took me 14 days to read and I gave it a 3 out of 5 stars. So overall, these books are rated very highly by the community as a whole. I think you will like these books if you like dual POVs. Also, if you're kind of new into the published book world, maybe you're more familiar with fan fiction and you're trying to get into the traditional book format. If you like character-driven, a bit slower paced stories where it's really mostly focused on the relationships, I would highly recommend you pick these up. However, if you have a more critical eye for writing or for pacing, and if you really like plots, don't. I did also think it would be interesting to include in this non-spoiler section some common reasons people gave for rating the book at different levels. And so when going through the reviews, I saw a lot of people who rated it 5 stars, giving it that rating, and they were describing the book as captivating, immaculate, steamy. A lot of people made their 5-star review comments in all caps. And then in the 3-star tier rating, a lot of people talked about how they had very high expectations and then they felt disappointed, and how it really is the characters who stand out in these books. And then in the 1-star rating, I saw a lot of people saying how they didn't like it because they didn't like instant love, which does happen in this book. A lot of people in this 1-star rating also said that there was a lot of over-explaining, like just too much description, or that nothing happened. It is a bit hard to describe the plot of this book without going into too much detail, especially since I am talking about all 3 of them in this, because it's like, if I talk about the second one and the third one, I'm giving away some stuff that happens in the first one. So I guess I will end this spoiler-free section by saying, if you've had these books on your list and they seem interesting to you and you like character-driven stories, I do think I would recommend them to you, but that comes with a big asterisk of being like, there are so many other books I would recommend more. For example, the Furyborn series back here, I also think is pretty character-driven, but I think the world is a lot more interesting in these ones. And now listen, this next section is not going to be spoiler-filled. Like, I'm not going to talk about the whole plot, so if you still want to read these books, it's not like you have to turn away now. I am more just going to start diving deeper into the characters, into the story, start reading some snippets from them. And so it's not spoiler-free, but it's not spoiler-filled. Now, I'm really conflicted on whether I should start with the things I enjoyed about these books or the things I didn't enjoy about these books, but I think I am just going to start by talking about the characters. Now, our main character, Alize, is formatted as this very headstrong, passionate, determined, and capable woman, which for the most part she is, and we see a lot of those things. She is a very strong fighter. She is very persistent. And in this first book, I did really like her. I thought she was familiar in that she was this long lost queen, and she's powerful and she has no family and everything, but also she felt very new and very fresh, and that was very exciting. And then in this second book, it felt like all of that was thrown out the window for the purpose of her being a not even better match for one of the characters, but just to make her more submissive. Honestly, I'll say it. I'll say it. There were times where it felt like she was infantilized. There were times where it felt like she was made to look stupid just so her love interest could appear to be smarter and more capable and stronger around her. And I did not like that. And there are a few examples I would like to point out in particular. I could not find the exact page number in the book, but there is a scene where our main character, Alize, and her love interest, Cyrus, are out and she says, oh, I've never really been into a bakery because I could never afford it. And I thought, that makes sense. And so he takes her in there because he thinks that that is ridiculous that she's never been into a bakery, and he buys her bread. And the way she handles this bread made me have to put the book down, because she is interacting with it like she's never had bread before. And then we come to find out that she has only had bread once in her life. It is mostly because she is this Jinn queen, and Jinn are a species in this book that do not really have to eat. But still, for some reason, the fact that she had only had bread once in her life felt so unbelievable to me. Like, there are dragons, there is magic in this book, but still that fact felt like the most unbelievable thing in the world. Just the line, Alize decided she liked bread very much. Just gives me the ick, honestly. Which is kind of a bad example of her being infantilized, but a better one is later in this book. She is following Cyrus because he's like sneaking off, and she wants to go after him and see where he goes in the night. And we get to see his point of view while this is happening. I can't even find it, but I so vividly remember reading how he was making her seem so just clumsy, and so like she was just like stomping around in the woods and breaking twigs at every step, and just like making so much noise and so much of a ruckus that he instantly knew she was there, and he instantly could sense her every move and could hear her teeth chattering even though she was trying to follow him. And I was like, she is supposed to be strong and capable, and you're telling me he can just instantly sense her because she is so clumsy around him. It just felt like she was constantly made to be smaller when around Cyrus so that he could appear stronger and better, and like he was reaching a hand out to her, being like, oh my god, she's so clumsy, I can sense her presence immediately. And I just feel like those things weren't needed. That, in addition to the way the sexual tension between them was treated in the third book, made me start to not like their relationship, and not like her in particular, because I just feel like it's like she's supposed to be strong, so make her fucking strong. But yeah, in the third book, especially towards the end, she says things like she wanted relief she didn't understand, wanted something from him she couldn't name. Like, she is treated like such an innocent being in this last book who, gasp, doesn't know what sex is. But then at the same time, in his point of view, he's saying things like, oh, if he said what he wanted to do to her, then like even the thought of it would kill her. Like, he wants to do such terrible things to her. And it's just like that dichotomy, it didn't work for me. But the worst examples of misogyny are in this first book. Our love interest is Cameron. It just feels like his character is supposed to be made out to be this brooding prince and cares deep down. But then in the second book, oh boy, there is another character, Miss Huda, who is friends with Alize. And the way Carmen talks about her made me hate him. Like, he hates every woman who isn't Alize. He actively puts them all down. And if he isn't made out to be a villain in the last books by the end of the series, I'm gonna be mad about that. Because I'm really worried that even though he talks so badly about Miss Huda, which I will give some examples in a minute, I am so worried that they're going to have an enemies to lovers plotline. And it's like, that just doesn't sit right with me. Like, he actively is talking bad about her looks, about her intelligence, just actively making fun of her in his like internal monologue, and I want him killed. So on page 143 of All This Twisted Glory, he says, Carmen almost choked, as if Alize's otherworldly beauty could ever be threatened by Huda, who continued to resemble an egg swaddled in the implausible scramble of its own yolk. And listen, I know I called it misogyny, and I do not think it is misogynistic. I just think that they are questionably written. No, I do think Carmen is misogynistic. I'm going to call him a misogynist, absolutely. But as a whole, these books are not misogynistic, but they are just, they play into some stereotypes at sometimes. Now, to end our little character talk here, I will talk about Cyrus, who is the only reason that I might consider reading the rest of the series. He is amazing. He is hot, first of all. He is hot. But also, he feels like the only one who is actually a character. He feels like he has so much depth, so much mystery, so much intrigue. Is he perfect? No. But he feels like a character who I would actually be able to root for. As the other ones, I feel like I've gotten so annoyed with them at this point. Like Carmen, I'm just like, I genuinely don't want to read his point of views anymore. Alize, I'm like, yes, I'm rooting for her, but she just feels so like, it feels like at the beginning of this book, she was made out to be this strong queen, and now all she kind of is a damsel in distress. And that's a bit annoying and unnecessary. Okay, now, before we talk about the pacing in this book, which is one of the main things I want to talk about, I want to dive into the one thing that I did really enjoy in these books, which is the relationships. In the first book, even though Carmen and Alize were in instant love, and even though they interacted 3 times, the scenes where they interacted, I was hooked. I was enthralled. It was like, oh my god, give me another. I could not stop reading them when they were interacting. Let me read you a few lines of these characters interacting so you get a bit of a better understanding of what I mean. In the first book, this Woven Kingdom, on page 322, we have Alize and Carmen having a conversation. And this is in Alize's point of view. And it says, he moved in front of her. That's absurd. I won't allow that to happen. She stepped aside. You cannot control the universe, Your Highness. I control more of it than you might consider. Do you even hear yourself when you speak? If so, how can you stand it? Improbably, the prince laughed. I must say, you are a surprise. I'd not imagine you to be so quick to anger. I find it difficult to believe you imagined me at all. Why? Alize hesitated, blinking up at him. I beg your pardon? What reason would you have to wonder about my temperament? You need only one? I have many. This scene, or these few lines, describe their whole dynamic, and how down bad Cyrus is the reason I have high expectations. Okay. I would marry you, he said, stepping closer again, coming dangerously within reach. I'd marry you tomorrow, and then I'd take you to bed, for weeks. She felt her face heat, her heart pounding recklessly. It was a shocking thing to say, but more shocking was the way her body reacted to his pronouncement. With a flare of desire she struggled to extinguish. And then, she said, failing to steady her voice, you expect me to kill you? He hesitated. The choice is yours to make. But on the topic of that conversation between them, I know some people are curious about the spice level of books. Either they prefer it one way or the other, and I will say that so far, this series has not had any overt spice. There was one scene in All This Twisted Glory where Cyrus did have a dream. It was like maybe 1 or 2 pages, and it was pretty vague. Like you could tell what was happening, but it wasn't like, it was more so him thinking about stuff as opposed to it being described what was happening. It was more just him processing his feelings. But I wouldn't be surprised though if there was spice in the previous books, just based on that one dream scene and just how the characters interact. I wouldn't be surprised if it was included. I don't know how this author's other books are, if there are spice in them, but there is one small scene in these books so far, but I would not be surprised if there was more in the future. So if that sways your opinion one way or the other, there's that information. Now, the last thing that I would like to talk about in this video is the pacing and the plot, which is placed on the back burner of these books. For starters, in the first 2 books, which amount to over 800 pages, 4 days of time passes. In the 3rd book, there is an hour-long conversation that we are told in the world it lasts for an hour. And this conversation takes up maybe 100 pages. Now, more time does pass in this 3rd book than in the first 2, but it is only because there is a month-long time skip So, like, yeah, I guess it's better, more time passes, but like, we don't get to see things that happen. Each time I was reading these books and I was reminded, like 300 pages in, oh, only a day has passed since the start of this book. It felt like unbelievable, honestly. It seriously feels like you see every single minute of these characters' days. Sometimes even when they're sleeping, because dreams are quite a prominent part of these books, especially in the last two. And I feel like bad pacing and bad plots kind of go hand in hand. It is more so that a good plot can be made bad by bad pacing. And that is kind of what happens here. Because the plot itself, the premise is interesting, but the pacing is just like nothing freaking happens. The first two books, well, okay, this first book feels slightly pointless, which I think I've said in this video. Besides the exposition you are given about the world we are in, I think you could take it out because Alize and Carmen don't make it past this book. Maybe they're brought back together later in the series, but it's like their relationship, which was really the only thing that was developed in this book, is pointless. And then in the second book, I think half of it could be taken out because half of it is Carmen's perspective. However, he and Alize are not, I don't think they interact at all in this book, honestly. And so our main plot, which is Alize and her rise to the throne, that is not at all connected to what Carmen is doing. And I have seen that done in other books. For example, the Fury Born series, it's 2 point of views and the main characters interact maybe twice and it works because the plots are still intertwined. Here, the plots don't feel intertwined at all. I genuinely think you could read this book and not read a second of Carmen's point of view. And the third book would still, for the most part, make sense. For fantasy books in particular, you could probably describe most of them in 1 to 2 sentences. And, you can get the basics of what happened in those books across. But usually they have a lot more depth and a lot more, side plots and a lot more, little things that add to the story that you need to understand. But these books, I think I could describe all 3 of them and have you understand the entire plot in like 3 sentences. In fact, I'm going to try it now. So if you don't want the whole thing of these spoiled, skip ahead 15 seconds. Alize is the Djinn Queen and she needs 5 people to sacrifice themselves so she can unleash her powers. She is kidnapped and taken to Talon, where Cyrus says that she should marry him and take his kingdom. Cyrus wants to do this because he is obligated to by his contract with the devil, and Alize considers it because she feels bad for him. If you've read these books, let me know if you think I missed anything in that review, because there's obviously, yes, there is stuff. You did not get to see their relationship develop. You did not get to see like some of the side characters, but like that is the whole plot. Not the whole book. That is not the entirety of the books, but that is the whole plot. See how I didn't mention Carmen once in those? That's because he's not important. Okay. Overall, my opinion of these books is, did I enjoy them? For the most part, yes. Do I think they're good? No. But the lack of plot, the over description, because there are some times where I'm just like, why are we getting a random memory from like 10 years ago? Like, I feel like this isn't needed. The description or portrayal of women in this book is also questionable to me. It's so hard to form an opinion on these books. There is one element that is holding them up so much, and that is the banter. It's like the characters are kind of lacking in that. I wish Alize had a bit more depth and was actually a strong character and was not just like, it just feels like we're told that she's a strong character, but then like in reality, she is shown to be very clumsy and always in distress and always in need of saving in some way. And I don't know. And just Carmen as a whole could be taken out with a gun, and I do not think these books would be missing anything. He could, in my defense. All of these things, all of my problems could be addressed in the later books, but I do not know. I am speaking about this as it is now. But let me know in the comments, have you read the This Woven Kingdom series? Were you planning to? Are you now not going to? Or are you going to after watching this video? Let me know. And if you have read them, let me know what you also think of my thoughts. These are obviously, some of these are in an echo chamber of my own head as I read and as I experience them on my own. I did, mention some other outside reviews, but I would love to have a conversation about them, about the plots, about, if you're able to look past some of my mistakes, or if you don't even see them as the bad things about this book. But anyway, that is the end of this video. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe, and maybe click one of the videos that are featured on the screen here. They're so convenient for you there. Wow, look at that. But with that, I will see you in the next one.